I promise you'll hate yourself for buying the wrong house. So let me tell you what the wrong house is. Today, we got the black box of death. In here are 8 or 10 houses that I'm going to tell you should never buy. Let's take a look, find out what the first one's. Choosing from the box. Buy the house that's a really good deal that you hate driving up to every night. Guess what? It's not a good deal if you hate pulling in the driveway. There could be a lot of reasons you hate pulling in the driveway. Maybe you don't like the driveway because there's a tree in the middle and it's hard to get out. Maybe it doesn't fit 2 cars. You know, the other things that could be that you pull up every night and you look at the brick color and you think to yourself, oh, this house is $50,000 less than the one down the street. But you know what? I hate this house. I hate this brick. I hate the front porch. You know, buying a house is something that you're going to live with for years. And a house is not worth it if you pull up in the driveway and think to yourself, I have regrets. I have regrets. This would be the perfect house, except even though I got a good deal. You know what the definition of a good deal is you got a good price and you're still happy with it. It's never a good deal if you got a good price and you hate it. So don't buy a house that you hate pulling up in the driveway for. How hard is that? If you don't like it in the driveway, don't buy it. Let's take a look more in the black box of houses you don't like. Okay, we have a few in here. As buying the most expensive house in the neighborhood. So you walk into a house and you love it. And it's great and it's big and it's huge and it's got a big lot. But it's the biggest house in the neighborhood, which means it's the most expensive house in the neighborhood. And you think to yourself, do I have to have this? Your answer should be no. You don't want the most expensive house in the neighborhood. Why? Because in 10 years, all the things about this most expensive house in the neighborhood aren't going to make that much of a difference. The extra $50,000 kitchen upgrade that you had to have is going to get dated, and in 10 years, somebody's not going to care. They're not going to pay more for a kitchen update that's 10 or 20 years old. Okay, the bigger lot, you might get more for that, but you're not going to get the $30,000 lot plus that you paid for to have a lot that's bigger than anybody else. The other part is, yeah, you know, that extra porch thing you put on the back that you paid $42,000 extra to have on your home, you're not going to get that back either. Your house might sell faster, or you might just, like sell it in 2 days quicker. All right, so you saved a few $100. But don't buy the most expensive house in the neighborhood, because later, the difference between the least expensive and the most expensive house is not going to be nearly as great as now. What you want to do is buy in the middle. Buying the house that's going to have the most appreciation. Buying the right neighborhood, buy a middle-sized house with a middle-sized price. So as the neighborhood goes up, you go up, and you're not at the top getting squeezed out from things on the bottom, because the most expensive house never appreciates as fast as the least expensive or mid-priced house. Okay, so let's go to the next in the black box of death of houses you don't want to buy. This one is skinny. The winner is buying a house that you don't have the time or money to maintain. Well, tell you what, you love a house and you want a pool. Let me tell you something. Don't buy a house with a pool unless you have the time to take care of it or you have money to pay somebody to do it. You know, I lived in one house with a pool one time. I will never do it again. I love the pool. The dogs love the pool. But I would say, I didn't like. And this is 1991. I didn't like the $125 a month that it cost me on top of everything else, which is now more like $300. And that house, I didn't have the money to maintain. I didn't have the money to maintain the pool. I didn't have the time to go out and do it myself. Here's another kind of house that you don't want to have when it comes to maintaining things. You don't want to buy a house that you can't afford to paint when it needs to be painted. Now, depending on where you live, you go 10 to 15 years without a paint job. Some places, you have to do it every 5 years. Why would you buy a house that's all wood and needs to be painted every 5 years for $15,000 when you can't set aside $3,000 a year towards painting your house in 5 years? Here in Houston, if you want a wood house and it's not hardy clay, it's wood, you're going to have to paint every 5 to 8 years. And yes, folks, that's someplace between $15,000 and $18,000. I'll tell you what, you shouldn't go borrow money from the bank to put it on your credit card. That means you can't afford the house. All right, let's go to another one. Let's see what we got. Black box. Oh, this is one that it's a folded up one and handled. Let's see. Buying a house that is really, really poorly redone. You know, there's this thing called flipping houses, and tell you what, I know all about it because I flipped many houses. I did it years ago before everybody in the world went to a seminar and thought they could get rich flipping a house. Let me tell you how to realize if a house is worth buying after it's been flipped. All you've got to do is look at the finishes. If the finishes are horrible, if the drawers don't match up, if the trim is a wreck, if the wall paint is just not done well, if the floor is not well laid, if the countertop doesn't look like it matches the rest of the house, or you have light fixtures that are so obviously cheap, don't buy the house. Don't buy a house that's been poorly renovated, whether it be from a flipper or whether it be from somebody who lived there, or don't buy a house that's been poorly built by a builder. I can't believe the houses that I had seen over the last 5 years. They were just thrown up. I mean, we had a shelf back here. You know, I walked into a builder's house where these shelves were crooked. They were crooked. How does that happen? Because somebody's not paying attention. And if you're not paying attention to the cosmetics and the paint and the shelf and the selections, they're not paying attention to the plumbing, to the electric, to all the other things that go with it, things like the roof, the structure, whether the front door is going to fit well, whether the windows are what they're supposed to be. Don't buy a house that's been poorly redone or poorly built. It doesn't matter how good of a deal, because you're going to end up spending much more money over the years fixing the things that should have been right to begin with. If you're going to buy a house, make sure that you have it inspected, make sure that all your finishes look great, and make sure it's finished. Let's go back to the light box. House I would never buy, house you should never buy, house that will kill you in the long run. A little bitty piece of paper. Buying a house that needs more work than you will really ever get done. You know, sometimes you can go into a neighborhood that you love and there's grandma's house. And you think to yourself, I can afford that. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to move in and I'm going to pay and I'm going to rent up that carpet and I'm going to go down to Lowe's and I'm going to get that beautiful vinyl plank or that wood floor and I'll install it and we can, you know, in a month my house will be painted and we'll have it enforced. Yeah, the kitchen, I'll sand down those cabinets and we'll restain them and do those kind of things. Yeah, I'll get a contractor to come in and put the new countertop on, but y'all do that. I'll tell you something. Most of the time, you're never going to get around to it. How much time do you have in your life right now? How much extra time do you have to devote to a major project? Because you just say to yourself, it's only going to take me a weekend to paint these 3 bedrooms. I can promise you, if you're a professional painter, it's not going to take you that weekend. It's going to take you 3 weekends. And then you're going to have a paint job that you really don't like. Don't buy a house that you don't have the ability and time to redo. Also, don't overestimate your ability to make something happen. I've got a friend who decided he was going to reroute his kitchen. And he watched what it was supposed to happen on YouTube. He gets his grinder, it grinds out all the ground in about 20 square feet, and then he starts to regrout it. And he looks at it and he realizes it's a disaster. He grinds it out again. The third time he gives up and he calls the contractor and says, here's $9,000. Fix what I'm screwed up. Don't buy a house that's too much of a headache that you will never get around to doing the things that you think you're going to do. You'll end up hiring somebody else. You'll end up spending more money, or it won't get done, and you'll end up hating the house. Let's go back to the light box. Oh, yeah, looks like I'm making 3 or 4. All right, light box says, now this one should seem like it makes common sense, but I got to tell you, working with people, usually in a spousal situation when there's a couple, one person is a stronger personality and their taste usually wins. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's say Susie, the wife, really is concerned about money, and Mike, the husband, is concerned about the garage. Susie, the wife, is the one that really is the pusher on the thing. We got to have a house, and she's watching the pennies. And what happens is Susie ends up insisting, and they buy a house that they can afford that makes her feel happy. But Mike hates and has no garage. Guess what? It's conflict in their marriage, because when he wants to do work on Saturday and has no garage, it's his wife's fault. Don't buy a house your spouse hates, even if it's a good deal, even if it's the house you always dreamed of, even if it's the style that you grew up in, but your spouse hates that style. You're in the business of being married long before you're in the business of owning a house that you like. Buy a house that your spouse can at least tolerate. Once I was working with a couple, we looked at 67 houses. They had different needs and different wants. At 67 houses, I became a marriage counselor, and I sat down and said, hey, here's what we're going to do. You make your list of 10 things, you make your list of 10 things, because I'm not showing you more houses until we go find one that meets 5 of the criteria both. Write down your 10, cut it down to 5, and we'll go find that house. And guess what? 3 houses later, we found a house where each of them loved the 5 things. Did they get everything? No. But it kept their marriage together, because the day I asked that, they talked about divorce that morning because they couldn't come to agree on a house after 32 years of marriage. Just a bit of marriage advice. Let's go back to the light odds. Buying a house that you can qualify for the mortgage, but you really can't afford. I'll tell you something. If you make $10,000 a month, good for you. According to what most lenders are at $10,000 a month, you should be able to spend $3,600 or $4,000 a month on your house payment. Well, let me ask you something. You really don't make $10,000 a month. You make $10,000 a month and you take home $7,500 by the time you pay taxes, and maybe even $7,000 after the time you pay for health insurance. And so now you're going to take half that money and have a house payment. What about the car payment? You got 2 car payments at $500. What about the groceries that are crazy right now? What about the 14-year-old that eats a box of cereal, 2 gallons of milk, and an entire pound of ground beef and bacon every day that you got to feed. You know what? Don't buy a house just because you can qualify for the mortgage. Just because somebody says you can pay it doesn't mean that you really can afford it. Lots of people are house poor. You know, one of my least favorite things, it drives me nuts. I hate seeing somebody who buys $1 million house, and it is beautiful. It is beautiful. And you pull up and the yard is a wreck. There's things that need to be done, and you go in, and the house, honestly, the furniture in the house doesn't match the house. It's the same furniture they had when they got married 22 years ago. Why would you buy such a big, beautiful house that's so expensive that you can't afford anything that should go along with that house? There's not really any joy living in a house where you can't take care of it, and you can't furnish it, and you can't feed your kids because you're so house poor just because our bank said you can borrow the money. Let's look at it this way. Oh, it's the solo out of the black box of death. Empty. Here we go. Let's see what we got. Last one. Now, you may think this is kind of whatever, but buying a house in the wrong location. Let me tell you why people buy a house in the wrong location. Because they get a deal. Because they like the neighborhood. Because they're tired of looking. Because whatever it is they don't care about. That doesn't matter. If you buy a house in the wrong location, it's going to come back and bite you in the long run. Let's talk about some ways it can be in the wrong location. First, a house that backs up to commercial. I never buy a house that backs up to commercial. I never want to sell a house that backs up to commercial. You know why? They're always sold at a discount because only 10 to 12, maybe 15% of people ever think that they want to live with a Best Buy in their backyard or a grocery store in the backyard. Or Lord knows, a condo where people are looking down, or apartments where people are looking down and seeing your pool and whistling at you. You don't want that. You don't want commercial in your backyard, even if it doesn't bother you, because the next person buying, they don't want it, so they're not going to look. You don't want 80 to 85% of the people, when you go to sell 10 years from now, if you've got Best Buy in your backyard, and on top of that, you're going to hate it at 3 o'clock when the trash truck comes to pick up the grocery garbage behind and beeps and bays all morning long. That's right. The wrong location, another kind of wrong location is one that's too far. I love the burbs. I lived in the burbs. I own a house in the burbs. I don't live in the burbs now. I get to see downtown. My kids are out of school, so I get to live where I live. But I want to tell you what, in the burbs, you can buy too far out because the first houses in the neighborhood are the hardest ones. They have to put up with the noise, the dust, the flat tire from the nails from all the construction for the first year. They also don't have a grocery store, and they also don't have schools. You really want to buy a new house and be really excited and have to drive 25 minutes to the next neighborhood over to go to the grocery store just to get milk and bread and 25 minutes back? And so when you say, I'm going to run to the store, it's an hour and 15 minutes. What about your kids in school? Okay, so they are zoned to this great elementary, and it's 25, 30 minutes away. You want to invest that kind of time? Because the bus doesn't come there yet, because this is a brand new street, and they're not on the route for the year, so you're going to have to take them. You know, it's the wrong location when you have to put too much time into doing and going places so that you can't stay home and enjoy your home. Another thing you don't want to do is buy a house that's too close. Too close to what? Too close to a restaurant. Here's what happens with restaurants. You got a wonderful restaurant down the street and around the corner, but people come to that restaurant, they don't have enough park. You know, where do they park? They park in front of your house, which they have the right to. It's a public street. But when your guests come over to see you on Friday night, there's no place for them to park because they have to park 3 blocks away because everybody who's going to the restaurant's already parked there. And I can promise you, once a month, somebody's going to block your drive. You're going to have to get in your car on Saturday night to go out and eat dinner. You can't get out. And you're going to sit there an hour and a half waiting for the tow truck to come and tow that car away so you can get out, and you'll miss your dinner date. Another kind of house that you don't want to buy besides commercial, too close, too far. Yeah, you don't want to buy a house that's too close to family. Where I'm in the city I'm in now, my parents had just moved to the other side, and we live 50 minutes apart. And my dad called and said, you know what? You bought the right house in the right location just far enough away. And I'm like, well, I thought you were wanting me closer. He goes, I don't want you closer. Here's the secret to a good family. Get along, living in the same city. We need to be close enough to see each other all we want. And about 45 minutes is pretty good, because at 45 minutes, if I'm going to come to your house, I'm going to call you and say I'm coming to your house, and you can clean your house so that your mom is impressed. You can tell the kids to put their stuff away so everybody's happy. You can change the sheets if we're coming to spend the night. We don't just show up unannounced. And guess what? You live far enough away that when y'all are coming over, I get to put my pants on before the front door opens and everybody comes piling in. That's right. You don't want to live too close to family unless it's the right family. There you go. The blind box. It's empty, but there's more. Don't buy a house that you love when it's not the right house. Don't buy the wrong house, or you'll end up in the black box as well.